primary navigation. Theoretically, any HTML link is a navigation element, but for our purposes, we'll refer to navigation in the context of primary and secondary navigation menus that visitors use to browse items. Primary navigation is also known as global navigation, while secondary navigation is referred to as local navigation. Primary navigation usually appears horizontally at the top of a web page, or sometimes vertically as a sidebar on the left side of the page. Primary navigation is easy to identify as it consistently appears in the same position across the website. For e-commerce websites, the labels in primary navigation represent major groups of information. It can be organized by departments, topics, top-level categories, target market, alphabetical order, or other ways, depending on how the information architects, marketing, and usability team structures the website. Walmart uses a vertical primary navigation, and the labels in this screenshot are the departments. On Bed Bath & Beyond, the primary navigation is horizontal and lists top-level categories. On Crocs, the primary navigation is represented by the main target market segments. You should display the global navigation vertically when you have a lot of items to list in the menu. Use a horizontal layout when you can fit all the important labels at the top of the design. Displaying the primary navigation horizontally limits the number of links that can be placed at the top of the layout to between 5 and 12, depending on how long the labels are. Don't worry, these are reasonable numbers for both users and search engines. A vertical navigation bar is more versatile and allows for more categories to be displayed. On e-commerce websites, however, the primary navigation is often supplemented by sub-navigation, such as drop-downs, flyouts, or mega menus, which can substantially increase the number of links on any given page. This screenshot shows a very common drop-down menu implementation. The clothing section lists several topical links. Usually triggered at mouse over, the drop-downs and flyout menus present some substantial usability issues. However, mega menus seem to perform okay. Refer to these two articles for more information on the usability of sub-navigation menus. In this screenshot, you can see an example of what's called mega menu. As you can see, a mega menu can include more than just a list of links. Staples handles drop-down menus in a more user-friendly manner. They gave up the standard mouse-over implementation. The submenu expands at click only. Additionally, notice the red down arrow icon. There isn't a hard limit on how many links to list in submenus. I recommend using as few or as many as it makes sense for users. Don't worry about search engines too much. And let me explain why. Often you hear suggestions to limit the number of links on a page to send more authority to possibly other more important pages. While it may be the right SEO approach on certain types of pages, such as product listing pages with faceted navigation, many times this recommendation disregards the user experience and usability. There is also a widely accepted SEO best practice, which suggests that the entire menu has to be SEO friendly, meaning that search engines should be able to crawl all the links in the menu. This is not totally accurate. In practice, some e-commerce websites could actually benefit more from not allowing robots to crawl just about any link in submenus. No doubt about it, you should present to users as many links as it makes sense, but you can also make some of them undiscoverable for search engines. This search engine unfriendliness of the links can't be categorized as cloaking as long as it's not done for cloaking purposes. After all, even Amazon uses this technique to push authority to product and categories listed in the main content area of the page, as you can see in this screenshot. Their global navigation, which is labeled Shop by Department, presents more than 100 links to users, which is useful to them to navigate the website, but the entire mega menu links are not hyperlinked for search engines, as you can see in the cached version of the page. A quick note here: if the links don't appear in the cached version, it doesn't mean that search engines are not aware of them, as they can execute JavaScript to discover those links. It all depends on how Amazon made those links uncrawlable. And Amazon is not the only top retailer to do this. Here's another retailer in top 100 doing it as well. However, their approach is a bit different. They allowed access to department links, but all the top categories, such as appliances or electronics, are not plain links. The same in this example. The primary navigation links are cached, but submenu navigation links are not. Making the links uncrawlable may sound strange and against SEO common sense, but it's a great way to balance usability and SEO. Users will get the links they need, while search engines will have access to prioritized links, which will prevent wasting crawl budget. The number of links in the primary navigation also depends on how many categories and subcategories your taxonomy has. If you have only top 5 category pages, each with 2 to 5 subcategories, then you can list all of them in the primary navigation. If you have 20 categories with 10 subcategories each, you need to give the primary navigation more consideration. A more radical technique for limiting the number of links in the navigation is to get rid of submenus completely. There will be no drop-downs and no mega menus, but you can eventually use just a drop-line menu. A drop-line menu is a submenu that has only one line of items in it. When you use a drop-line menu, you need to carefully choose the labels. This website also uses a minimalist approach with just 4 links in the primary navigation. This approach works pretty well on apparel websites. If you decide to keep a minimal number of links, make sure that the navigation helps users find content quickly and is not actually making their task more difficult. Going back to PageRank basics, we know that the more links on a page, the less authority flows through each link. Thinking in terms of user experience, the more cluttered a page is, the more complex content findability is, and the higher shopper anxiety is. It therefore makes sense to reduce the number of options and improve user experience by minimizing decision paralysis. This is where click tracking and analysis plays an important role. You identify which links are helpful for users using metrics such as the most clicked links and remove the ones that are not. If you have multiple links pointing to the same URL, you can decide either to leave only one link or to implement browser-side URL tracking parameters. You have several tools at your disposal to track clicks and click paths. For example, Google Analytics allows some nice visual click analysis with reports like user flow and behavior flow. In Google Analytics, you can also use the navigation summary report, which can be found under behavior, site content, and all pages. You can get up to 500 data points that you can export and analyze further with Excel. Other tools such as Crazy Egg or ClickTel can do click analysis as well. No matter which tool you use, the goal is to identify links that can be either removed from the navigation or consolidated into logical groups. In many cases, home pages link to top-selling and high-margin products, categories or subcategories, and this is good for users and search engines. If you're concerned about the number of links on the page, you can easily consolidate the links to About Us, Contact Us, Terms of Use, and Privacy pages. I advise testing to see whether the uncrawlable links approach or the reduced number of links approach works best for you, as each website is different in its own vertical. When discussing primary navigation, we also have to discuss navigation labels. The categories and subcategories listed in the menus should take into account business goals and user testing. For example, if 20% of your categories generate 80% of the revenue, then those categories should be linked from the primary navigation. You should also experiment with other decision metrics, such as the most searched terms on the website, the most visited pages, and so on. Regarding the labels present in the navigation text links, there are two schools of thought in terms of SEO. The first one suggests that labels should not contain the target keywords. The second one says that the labels should actually contain the target keywords. What I can recommend with confidence is to avoid forcing keywords in the primary and secondary navigation labels. Also, you need to avoid clever labeling. Navigation labels have to be easy for users to understand and to enable them to find the information they want quickly and easily. For example, what is the label "Inspired Living" supposed to mean on a home improvement website? You should design the navigation to pass the trunk test, which means you will make it very intuitive and use clear labels. Search engines should not be the focus when labeling primary and secondary navigation. In other words, you have to label for users, not for bots. If that means using keywords in labels, that's fine. If your labels don't require keywords in order to be useful for users, then don't force keywords just for SEO reasons. Sometimes keywords can show up in the navigation naturally. For example, if an e-commerce website sells musical instruments and wants to rank for the keyword guitars, having a guitars label in the navigation is natural and it will help. There is an alternative for those who want to push longer keywords in the primary navigation menus. You can use images to design the menu so it includes short text labels for users, while adding longer labels as keywords in the alt text of the images for search engines. But remember not to spam the alt text. Additionally, you can implement a technique called image replacement. For more information, read the article listed at the bottom of this slide. As an example of short label in an image plus longer alt text, take a look at this screenshot. The short image labels are shoes, handbags, watches, jewelry, and dresses. However, the alt text of each image label contains longer keywords, as you can see in the HTML source code. Your end goal is to create navigation menus that meet user needs and reflect their behavior on the website. Because these image labels are short, it will allow people to quickly scan them. Menu labels can represent a single category, but they can also represent multiple categories grouped into a single label. Whenever you group categories into a single label, you still need to create separate URLs for each category. For example, if you group pharmacy, beauty, and health into one label, as in this image, you need to create a separate URL for the pharmacy category, another one for the beauty category, and another one for the health category. That is, if you want to increase the chances of ranking for keywords like pharmacy, health, or beauty separately. If you don't want to rank for these terms separately, you don't need to create separate pages. Grouping categories works best when you plan a new website, or if the current website is fairly new and you can make changes without affecting an established taxonomy. The opposite of grouping is degrouping, which is when you want to split categories grouped under a single label to create multiple categories. It will be more complicated to split URLs if your website has already been online for a while and you grouped categories under a single URL. In the latter case, one option is to leave the grouped category as is and create new pages for each subcategory in the group. From the primary navigation, you should link to canonical categories. For example, if video games is categorized in both games and electronics, and games is the default category for video games, then the path in the primary navigation should be games, then video games. This creates short, unique crawl paths for search engine robots.